Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today guys, we're taking a look at the Vampire Knight build for ESO's Greymoor, I guess you could say, but it's really just for whatever content you want to play it in. I just have to be releasing it during the PTS cycle of Greymoor, and yeah. So, it's a really cool build, it's fun to play. If you are into that thematic type of play style and you're looking for something a little different from, you know, then you come to the right place. So let's go ahead and take a look at this build, starting with, of course, our stats and everything. So this is the Vampire Knight Necro build. Now you can do this with a bunch of different classes, to be honest. Necro, Nightblade, Templar, Warden, you name it. But I find that the Necro has certain tools in its arsenal that make it really good for what it does. And it works out really well for this type of playstyle. So let's go ahead and jump into the stats. So we have 64 points in the stamina. This is going to give you 30,900 max stam with the Khajiit. Now, Khajiit isn't the only race you can play with this. You can play any race pretty much. Khajiit just plays into my theme of the character for my purposes. So, like I said, any race can work for this. I just use Khajiit because of story preference, character preference, that kind of thing. It really just comes down to your preference of play. So, 18k magic, 27k health, 30k stamina, almost 31k stamina. We do have a 1008 magic recovery, 457 health recovery, and a 772 stam recovery. This is a heavy armor build. That's why we have 16k spell resist, 16k physical resist. And then going on down here, we have the Thief Mundus Stone. Now, I would say this is optional, but this build is made to be solo friendly, group friendly, whatever you need it to be, it'll play in. It can play a lot of different roles besides what you're going to see here. So, Thief is definitely one of the better choices for the way it's set up right now. We do have minor protection at all times. We also have major savagery at all times because of the way the build is set up. We also are Vampire Stage 1. Now, if you can get Vampire Stage 2, 3, 4, any one of those is going to work even better for this, because as you can see, you do take higher flame damage, and your regular ability cost goes up, your vampire ability cost goes down. You do use a lot of vampire abilities with this. Tri-stat food, really good for this build because it gives you the magic, health, magic, and stamina at like 4k. We'll take a look at that over here in the equipment. So, as with all my builds, I'm going to go over the equipment, the traits, the enchants, all that on here, and then I'll go over the skills and then the CP. So starting with food and drinks, potions, tripods are going to be probably your best go-to because you do use all three resource types, so it comes in handy. The next one is Tri-Stat food, so really good. Now, moving on to the sets, starting with the monster set. Now, a lot of people are going to question why I'm using this for more of a DPS type setup. It's mainly because it gives what it gives. It really plays into the whole vampire theme really well. So, starting with the monster set, we are using Bloodspawn. Now this gives you stam recovery, a little bit, not a lot, but enough. On the one piece, the two piece gives you, when you take damage, you have a 6% chance to generate 8 ultimate and gain and increase your physical and spell resist by 3,300 for 5 seconds. This effect can occur every 5 seconds. Now this is whenever you take damage. Somebody brought to my attention on my werewolf build, not in a very polite way, that with the werewolf, Hide of the Werewolf, you have to take damage. A lot of sets, you have to take damage. you're gonna take damage. Regardless if you're playing a DPS character, a tank, a healer, you're gonna get damaged in some way, shape, or form. So even that minor 6% chance does play well into this build. So it's a really good way of generating ultimate. It's a really good way of boosting your resistances. You're gonna have about an 18k or a 24k resistance when you're fully buffed up. So it plays out really well. Moving on now to the other set. On the chest piece or the body, we are using Hunting's Rage. Now this is great. 2-piece max or weapon crit, 3-piece max stamina, 4-piece weapon crit, 5-piece. You add 261 weapon damage flat out the door, extra to your weapon damage. This is important for a multitude of reasons. It's going to give you a really good amount of weapon damage, and this build plays a lot on physical damage as well as a mix between magic and physical. The next set, and this is why it is called the Vampire Knight, besides being a vampire, Vampire's Cloak is another great set for this kind of setup. 2-piece max health, 3-piece spell damage, 4-piece max health, and then the 5-piece gain minor protection at all times, increasing your damage taking or reducing your damage taken by 8% all the time. So this applies to the fire damage you take. This applies to any damage. So it works out really well. And we are also using a 2-handed sword with a bow of the Vampire's Cloak. Alright, let's go over traits and enchants. Starting with the body piece, or the helm, body, chest, and legs. We are using tri-stat enchants here. This is going to be good all around for anyone, because if your character lacks health, you can get health from this. Yes, it doesn't give you as much stamina and magicka as a pure magicka stamina enchant, but it gives you all 3 attributes across the board, and those 3 attributes will play into your character regardless, because no matter what you play, whether you're playing a stamina character, a magicka character, whatever, you use the other opposite resource, so having that little bit of extra really plays well into your stuff. Now, on this build, the legs and the helm we're using Invigorating. You don't have to use Invigorating if you don't want to. For some reason, these pants and the rest of the outfit, I never upgraded. But don't worry, it's fine. Don't stress the smaller stat pools for the rest of the build. I just didn't upgrade these from white to gold for a reason. I wanted you guys to see what this would look like with the lower end gear, so you can see that even with lower end gear, you can still play a build like this and be effective. You won't be super godly, but you'll be effective. So, but Invigorating is going to be your best bet for this. This is going to give you increased health, magic, and stamina recovery by 11 when it's golded out, 3 when it's not. Now on the body, we are using Reinforced, and this increases your armor resistance by 12% with white, 16% with gold. Another reason why I'm showing this. Then we have Divines. Now Divines, gold on the smaller pieces, and all the smaller pieces are Divines, will give you 7.5% increase to your Mundus Stone effect with 351 max stamina. But if you look when I go over the gloves here, they still have 351 max stamina because the enchant is gold. It will always be its maximum value. It's the set bonus that changes. As you can see, the Divines again drops to 3.5% instead of 7.5. So we do see a big difference when using white versus gold, but it's not a massive difference. And this is one of the things I want to point out to people. If you can make your armor any quality better than white, it will improve your character overall by a small percentage. Not a massive percentage, a small percentage. Now when you take all 5 pieces, that you're wearing on your body, because this is a crafted set, and look, all 5 pieces are white. When you upgrade this to gold quality, it will give you a better overall playability with your character, because it's going to not only enhance the trait, it's also going to enhance the set bonuses. So the set bonuses for this normally are 800 and something critical, 1,000 something stamina, and it's 290 weapon damage when this is golded out. So this is a really good set. Even in white quality, it's not as effective as gold quality, but it's still as, well, I wouldn't say it's less effective. I mean, it is, but it's not as less effective as a lot of people will make it out. The quality of your gear sets your character to be great, have a greater potential when you look at it with every enchant, every passive, everything. Alright, so moving on now to the small pieces again. Divines, max stamina, and then the tri-stats here with the invigorating on the 2 head and legs, and then the chest reinforced. Jewelry, 2 tri-rune rings with weapon damage. This is going to allow you to maximize your max stamina damage output. You have a little bit of magic damage output because of using the vampire cloak set. It increases your spell damage, but you're only using so many spell damage abilities that play into it. You want to take advantage of every ounce of your character you can. Moving on to the necklace, we are using an infused necklace, magic recovery. We want that better magic recovery because we are a vampire, and we are using a lot, not a lot, but a few vampire abilities. Moving on to the weapons, the sword is infused, a life drain enchant. Now, a lot of people say, why a life drain enchant? Vampires are going to take a lot of damage with some of their abilities because it uses health versus magicka or stamina. So having a way of gaining your health back is really important. Because there's a lot of times you're not going to even have a heal skill equipped depending on where you play in a group. So if you're playing a DPS, you want that higher incoming healing. So that's why for the heavy armor. The heavy armor is going to give you the higher incoming healing versus medium or light armor. On top of that, you're also getting that life drain, which is going to get boosted by your healing received. So it's going to give you a little bit more health every time you use it. Onto the bow, infused, weapon and spell damage. We want that higher weapon damage. Definitely. Spell damage will come in handy as well. Alright, moving on to skills. Now, I did this the last time, I'm going to do it this time. So, starting with your class skills, unlock every skill you can that's going to play into the way your character plays. Not into just the role they play, but into the way you want the character to play. Like, this character's primarily stamina, so all of the abilities I mostly use are stamina-based in the damage line. When it comes to Bone Tyrant, the tanking line, I have a stamina morph for Ruinous Scythe. Everything else is magicka because there is no other stamina. When it comes to Living Death or the healing line, it's all magicka based. Now, why would I unlock a bunch of healing skills when I'm playing primarily a stamina DPS? Well, here's why. Because you're not always in a group. You're not always in that perfect setup. So having tools that allow you to diversify your character in different situations, whether you're playing in PvP, PvE Overland, Delves, Public Dungeons, World Bosses, Dungeons, or even in Trials, you want a good set of tools. Now, when it comes to PvP, the same thing applies. If you're playing in Battlegrounds, you want a specific build setup that's going to give you all the tools necessary to basically be a tank, healer, and DPS all in one. Because you're not just there for yourself, you're there with a group of players, and being able to assist that group with heals, damage, and survivability is what's going to be key to your character. The same thing goes with Cyrodiil when you play in the Cyrodiil. Now, Cyrodiil isn't strictly PvP. Cyrodiil and Imperial City are PvP with PvE enabled. And what I mean by that is it's a PvP area in a PvE zone. So everything about Cyrodiil and Imperial City is PvE with PvP in it. So there's delves, there is anchors in some areas, there is cities that you can go to and you can barter with and you can take control of, and that stuff can be soloed, or you can do it with a group. Just like with everything else in PvE, you can do it solo or with a group. The difference is that you have in PvP, you have Cyrodiil places you capture. So you have keeps and castles and cities and other things that you can capture. Where in Imperial City, it's more PvE with PvP enabled. So in Imperial City, it's more about capturing districts, but it's about PvE mostly. Most of the stuff you're going to be facing in there is going to be PvE littered with PvP, okay? But you are fighting PvE enemies mostly. So having a good build, again, with the tools necessary to play in those environments and being able to switch up in those environments is really key to any character. Because the more you build for one playstyle over another, the more you limit your options and your availability of what your character can do. So that's one of the reasons why I tell people unlock as many skills as you have available, because it's going to give you a lot of tools in your tool set. Alright, so we're going to go over the skills we have on the toolbars, and then we're going to go over skills we have unlocked. So starting with the first ability, I love this new ability from the Vampire skill line, Blood for Blood. Rend an enemy dealing X amount of magic damage and deals 100% more damage based on your missing health. So the more damage you take, the more damage you apply. This is awesome. Next ability we have is called Brawler. Now, this deals physical damage to a group of enemies in front of you. Whenever you hit those enemies, you gain a damage shield for 6 seconds for 4,625 for one enemy, and 50% to 300% more based on the other enemies you hit. So the more enemies you hit, the stronger shield you get. This makes it really good for solo play. Also in group play, good survivability with decent damage. I won't say great damage, decent damage really plays well. Next we have Unnerving Boneyard. Now this is how you're going to get your Major Breach and Major Fracture. This will increase your physical and spell damage, because it reduces the enemy's physical and spell resistance by 5,000 turn 80. This applies in both PvE and PvP. It also deals frost damage over 10 seconds, and it does consume a corpse on casting, which will deal more damage. And it's also a great synergy. Next ability we have, and this is a floater ability. There is another ability I like to use here, but because of how we're playing in a dungeon right now, which is considered 4-man group play, and I'm going to be soloing, I need a heal. I need a way to keep myself alive. So I'm going to use Resolving Vigor. Otherwise, I would use the Vampire skill line, and I would use Simmering Frenzy. This is a great ability. It boosts your weapon and spell damage by 600, and every second this ability is toggled, though, you take damage up to 10. It increases the cost of the health that it uses, so it builds really fast. So you can only have it on for a short duration, usually 1 to 4 seconds, and then I gotta turn it off, and then I gotta get my health back. That's another reason why I like Brawler on the front bar. Gives me a shield, but it also gives me that extra damage for Blood for Blood. So Resolving Vigor, really great heal over time, heals you for 13,000 over 4 seconds, but you're wearing heavy armor, so you actually get increased healing from it. Next we have Evil Hunter, and this is here because we're primarily playing solo right now. We're not going to be burning through a lot of potions, stamina potions to give us stamina back, give us weapon damage, give us major brutality or major savagery. We need something else in its place. This does that really well, and it's also good for PvE and PvP, because in PvE not too often do you run across invisible enemies. In this new content, you will run across invisible enemies. This plays well with making them appear. It also reduces the cost of your Fighters Guild abilities, so you do use some Fighters Guild abilities with this setup. Alright, moving on to the next ability, we have Flawless Dawnbreaker. This is our ultimate. As you can see, it costs 131 ultimate to cast. This one, you arm yourself with an ability that deals X amount of damage to all enemies in front of you in a cone, and all those same enemies will take an X amount of damage over 6 seconds. After activating, your weapon damage is increased by 300 for 20 seconds. This is not your primary, this is for trash clear. Alright, moving on to the back bar. This is where you're going to get your primary vampire ability. And a lot of these other abilities do work really well from the vampire skill line. I'm not going to lie, they're very powerful, some of them. Some of them even help with you getting into vampire form. It's really great. So the next abilities we have here are Venom Arrow. This does poison damage up front, poison damage over 10 seconds. But if you hit an enemy that is casting an ability or whatever, as long as they're activating an ability, when you hit them with this, it will interrupt them, set them off balance, and stun them for 3 seconds. Works in PvE and PvP. Next ability we have is called Arrow Barrage. Now, Arrow Barrage is a lot different than Endless Hail because it covers a larger radius. That's the main reason why we're using it. Covers a larger radius, hits more enemies within that circle. It deals the same amount of damage over time, every second, for 8 seconds after a 2-second delay. Now, Endless Hail does last for 10 seconds, so it does have a 2-second longer time frame. Next ability we have is another great ability I love using, and that is Empowering Grasp. So anytime you use this, you summon skeletal hands that come up from the ground and snaring your enemies by 50% for 3 seconds and inflicting them with minor maim for 5 seconds, reducing their damage done to you by 15%. Hitting you or your allies grants them Empower for 5 seconds, increasing the damage of your next light attack by 40%. Hitting your skeletal mage or spirit mender, it enhances them also for 5 seconds, increasing their effectiveness by 40%. We are not using either one of those, but you can if you want to, and it does help out. So, next ability we have is, this is our resistance buff, Beckoning Armor. This increases physical spell resist by 5,280 for 20 seconds. And then on top of that, while active, your enemies that strike you with ranged attacks will be pulled towards you once every 3 seconds. And it creates a corpse on completion when the timer ends, which is 20 seconds. Then, of course, we have Evil Hunter again. We want that high crit on both bars, front and back. And then last but not least, we have a really cool ultimate ability, Swarming Scion. Now, there is the other Scion morph, which is cool because it gives you this, like, boost to your, like, gives you none of the flaws of being a vampire, but it doesn't do what this does. So this one is really cool. So it transforms you into a monstrous creature of the night, instantly healing to full health, while transforming your max health, magic, and stamina increase by 10,000. You heal for 16% of the damage you deal, and you and you can set enemies or see enemies through walls. Bats also swarm around you, dealing magic damage. Having the ability to boost magic damage, so that weapon enchant we have on our bow is going to increase our damage output for the bats. Anything we can do, including that Simmering Frenzy, when we have it active and we're in vampire form, vampire lord form, that's when I like to use this, because I get that extra 600 weapon and spell damage, which applies to the bats as well. So, really important. And that's the skills I use on this build when I'm solo playing. Depending on how I'm playing in a group, there's so many different damage-based abilities I might swap in and out, along with, you know, my class, my weapons, everything like that. So that's why I tell people, look at what your character can unlock, because the more skills you have available, the more tools you have to access. So moving on now to the tools we have access to. Unlock every single one of your class abilities that is going to benefit you regardless. Weapon abilities, two-handed. Unlock all the abilities so you have access to them. Same thing with bow. Unlock all the abilities that you can have access to them. And passives. Make sure you learn those passives because they do give you minor boosts that do play into all the other passive boosts you get. So, armor. We are a heavy armor build, so you want to fill in this maximized. Now, because this is PTS, they do unlock all the other light and medium. But on medium armor, the top two and the bottom one, light armor, the top three. That's all you need if you're playing this in heavy. If you're going to play this in medium, unlock medium completely, 3 heavy, and 3 in light. It does work either way. I just prefer heavy armor with this build because it gives it a little bit more oomph and survivability. So, moving on, Soul Magic, I do unlock the 2 active abilities and all the passives. And then, of course, the Vampire, you're going to unlock everything, including the passives. And these are the skills I unlock for Vampire. Swarming Scion, Blood for Blood, Simmering Frenzy, Exhilarating Drain, Hypnosis, and Blood Mist. And then moving on to the guild skills, Fighter's Guild, unlock all of them, including the passives. Now I know we do get we don't get a pull or anything like that. A lot of people say, well, we do because of our beckoning armor. It doesn't pull every enemy, so having Silver Leash is another good ability to pull enemies in if you want. And it depends on the situation again. Next, we have Ring of Preservation. Really great group heal and way of giving your group minor protection and minor endurance. This increases stamina recovery and it increases their resistance or damage reduction by 8%. But we already have that. We don't really need it. But it plays really well in the group play. We have Evil Hunter and then, of course, Barb Trap. Mage's Guild. Whatever you feel you want to unlock for this is going to be best for you. I like Ice Comet, Enter Light, Degeneration, Shielding Ruin, and Balance, or Scalding Ruin and Balance, along with the passives. Sagic Order, same thing, unlock the skills that fit you best. If you are playing this Stamina, Crushing Weapon is always going to be best, but you can use the other Morph, and it does a little bit less damage. So really up to you what you want to use here. Undaunted, I unlock the Undaunted skills that play into my build playstyle, so Sanguine Altar, Tangled Webs, Inner Beast, Spiked Bone Shield, and Mystic Orb. And then, of course, when it comes to Alliance, I do unlock these 3 abilities normally. But for this, I don't use the Caltrops because I don't need it. I have another ability that works just as good called Unnerving Boneyard. So we have Aggressive Horn, Resolving Vigor, and then, of course, on the support side, we have Reviving Barrier, Efficient Perch, and Store Guard. Now, if you want to play a lot of PvP, I would suggest unlocking all the passives for the Alliance War skills, because then you can take advantage of the passives for when you're playing in PvP. Okay, moving on to racials. We are a Khajiit, so we get the Robustness, which increases our health and mag recovery by 100. Or health recovery by 100, and then mag and stamina recovery by 85. Then we get Lunar Blessing, which increases max health, magicka, and stamina by 825. This is the only race that gets all 3 stats enhanced. And then we get Feline Ambush, which increases your critical damage and critical healing by 10%. It also decreases your detection radius and stealth by 3 meters. Being a vampire, getting stealth, yeah, comes in handy. Alchemy, medicinal use, and then, of course, provisioning, Gorban, and Connoisseur. Those are really good passives to get, especially if you're playing more in-game. And what I mean by in-game, I'm talking about veteran and hard mode stuff, like dungeons and trials and arenas. This stuff comes in handy. In PvP, it comes in handy because it increases the time frame of your food and drink. And then on the alchemy side, you have the medicinal use, which reduce when using potions, resulting effects last 30% longer. So really, really efficient there. Alright, moving on now to our CP. Now, I use a universal champion point setup. I use it for every build I make because it works really good. Now, it doesn't mean you have to use this. There is 1.5 million different CP combinations you can use. This is just what I prefer with this particular setup. So, starting with the red tree, the steed, we have 56 in the ironclad. This reduces your damage taken against direct damage attacks by 20%. We have 20 into spell shield, increasing your spell resistance by 1900. Then moving on over here, we have 31 into thick skin. This reduces your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. We have 43 into hardy, reducing your physical, poison, and disease damage taken by 10%. And then 43 into elemental defender, reducing your damage taken from flame, frost, shock, and magic damage. Moving on, we have 40 in the Bastion. This increases the effectiveness of your damage shields, and this does apply to Brawler. That's why we want that 40 points in there. We want our damage shields as effective as possible, especially on that Brawler. Increasing it helps. Next, we have 19 into Quick Recovery, increases your healing received by 5%. And then we have 18 into Heavy Armor Focus, increasing your physical resistance by 1729 when wearing 5 or more pieces of Heavy Armor. Heavy Armor Focus, Light Armor Focus, and Medium Armor Focus do require you to wear 5 of that armor type to get the benefits. That's why we have the 18 points in here. Moving on, Green Tree, 40 into Warlord. This reduces the cost to break free by 16%. 16 into Sprinter, reducing your sprint cost by 10%. 16 into Bashing Focus, reducing your bash cost by 10%. And then moving on to the middle tree. We are a heavy armor build. Having 75 into Tenacity is going to play into this really well. It'll increase your magic and stamina return of your fully charged heavy attacks. You notice how we are built into mag recovery as well, with 43 points giving us an increase of 10% mag recovery. That's because our stamina is going to come back from our heavy attacks. Our magic is going to come back naturally, just over time. Moving on to the last green tree, we have 40 into Tumbling, reducing the cost to dodge roll by 16%, and 40 into Shadow Ward, reducing your block cost by 16%. Moving on to the blue tree, we have 43 into Bless. This is going to increase your healing done by 10%. Now, this doesn't apply to every heal you do. It does apply to most healing you do. Does not apply to your enchants. But your enchants are affected by your healing received. So more healing received you have, wearing heavy armor, gives you 10% healing, or 8% healing received, along with the other 5%, you get over 10% healing received, which plays really well into a vampire. Anyone, in fact. Moving on, we have 35 in a physical weapon expert. This increases the damage of your two-handed, one-handed sword and shield, or one-handed and shield, dual-wield bow weapons, and werewolf form by 20%. This is your light attacks and heavy attacks. So you're going to be doing quite a few light and heavy attacks anyways. Heavy attacks for resource return, light attacks for damage output. This is going to help you increase that by 20% with the 35 points in here. Then we have 40 in a Master in Arms. This increases your damage done with direct damage attacks by 16%. It's a high amount when you look at the overall damage potential. We also unlock Butcher, which increases our light and heavy attack damage done when enemies are below 25% health by 5%. This is also key to this build. To any build that you see me where I have this set up, this will be key to it to help you kill things faster when you get them to a certain range of health. Moving on, we have 56 in the Mighty. This increases physical poison disease damage done by 12%. 56 in the Precise Strikes, increasing critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 20%. And then 40 in the Thaumaturge. This increases your damage done with damage over time effects by 16%. Remember, primary stamina build, so I want my stamina side to be primarily the damage output. doesn't mean that I can't use magic abilities or magic damage. I'm built for stamina. I'm utilizing those other tools for their ability to increase my damage output as a vampire. So, really cool thing. And then I want to mention something else about the CP setup before I continue on. I use a universal CP setup. It's one that I can put on any character, and I just need to make minor adjustments to show you how it works. If you're playing Trials or you're playing whatever environment you're playing in and you need to adjust your CP to that environment, do that. Do not follow my tree exactly. Use the CP tree that's going to fit your environment the best. Resetting CP only costs 3,000 gold. It's not that expensive. Alright, now that you guys have seen that stuff, let's go ahead and see this build in action. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into this dungeon. We are in the depths of Malatar. This is one of my favorite dungeons for showing a build, because it really lets you get in, see the enemies, like a couple groups of enemies, and you can see how well this build can solo play. But then we're going to go against a boss. And I'm going to fight the boss up to where it disappears, which is 76% of its health. When that happens, you'll see. It'll disappear. Alright, so first group. Make sure you always have your buffs going first. And I threw out the wrong one, but that's still going to give me Empower for a few seconds. So we're going to throw this out. And if you notice, I'm using Brawler quite a bit. I'm trying to keep that damage shield on me as much as I can. But if you guys notice, the primary ability I'm using is actually light attacks with the Eviscerate from the Vampire line. The Vampire line Eviscerate ability is actually super powerful when you get it to go off, especially when you've taken some damage, because then your damage shows with it. So like here we go, we got some damage. I'm going to heavy attack, light attack, or use that ability, and then light attack. So, and remember, when you play by yourself, you're not playing a DPS, you're not playing a tank, you're not playing a healer, you're playing everything. You're a tank, a healer, and a damage dealer all in one. That's what solo play is about. It's about being able to maintain your character in a way that gives you all the benefits necessary to basically be a one-man army. Oops, wrong ability. But that's okay, I can use that Unnerving Boneyard a second time. And if you look, some of the times I'm hitting for about 6k with that Vampire Eviscerate. And then other times I'm hitting for, there's times where I can hit with it up to 8k. There you go, 7,200 and something. It really depends on how you use your abilities to give you that advantage, that higher damage potential advantage. Now, a lot of people say heavy attacks don't do a lot of damage. They can, especially with the two-handed, because you're going to hit multiple targets. So you actually get like really good AoE spike damage, and it's not really spike damage, it's just really good damage. So it's a good thing to have. Now we're in the boss's room, and this boss has a tendency to move around, and there he is. So we're going to go ahead and do this. We're going to shoot him with Poison Injection to start, Endless Hail, and then you want to hit him with the Empowering thing. Now we can go into Vampire form also, and this is really going to help us out because we get a massive amount of health. But on top of that, we also get higher stamina and magicka for a short time. So as you can see, we have like 30, 40k magicka. So we can actually go really ham on this ability. And it's going to give us that higher damage potential again for that. So now remember what I said. When you get this thing down to a certain amount of health, you're going to want to use your abilities. Oops. Oh, I died. That's fine. But you want to you want to really watch your ability use also, because when you're fighting this guy, he will disappear at 76% health. Then he comes back when you find him. You have to go hunt him around, and he's going to set these little booby traps. Just avoid the booby traps, find him, and then he's going to knock you down to the ground and start eating your life. He's actually quite easy to defeat, even in veteran mode. So, alright, going back to the Way Shrine now. And that is it for the Vampire Knight build. Now, this used to be the Vampire Lord. I have a new build for the Vampire Lord, which will be coming out here soon. And it will be changed from Necromancer into Nightblade, because Nightblade plays really well for what I want to do with the Vampire Lord. And you guys will see that when I get to releasing it. But this is the Vampire Knight. This is a primary heavy armor build, and like I said, any race will work for it. Any class will work for it, really. It really depends on how you want to play. I like it on the Necromancer because it fits my character's story. It fits to my character's story, because I'm a role player at heart, so it's really cool. But that is it for the build. I hope you guys like it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I hope you guys are excited for more builds to come, because I do have a lot more builds coming. They are going to be really interesting themed builds and some really interesting fun builds, along with all the builds I play normally. So, as always, if you like this build, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, hit that subscribe button. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.